This is Michael Popok, Legal AF. Donald Trump put his crash test dummy children in control officer positions in violation of New York law. And now you're seeing the results during the New York civil fraud trial brought by Letitia James. There's no other way to put it. The thing that they think is their defense, where each of them has testified, at least Eric and Don Jr. have testified, we don't know what that document is. Our name's on it, but we don't remember it. We don't know what it was used for. This is actually proving the fraud and their liability for the fraud. It's not a defense. It's evidence of the crime or the fraud. And that's the part they don't understand. I'm a New York practicing lawyer for the last 32 years. I know the New York corporation or business corporation law really, really well. I litigate it all the time in courthouses all around New York. And it's very clear, if you're going to occupy the chair as a control officer or an officer or director of a New York corporation, you have duties and responsibilities. And Donald Trump, of course, doesn't want anybody to push back against his worst instincts and his fraud. So he put in positions of control officer positions like the chief financial officer, the controller, and all of these children, just patsies that he could just throw over like straw people, right? Like inflatable dolls, and just do whatever he wanted to do without any oversight or pushback or control or compliance whatsoever. And that's how you get away with a fraudulent criminal enterprise for as long as Donald Trump and the Trump organization has. We're seeing it now writ large in the courtroom, 5 weeks of a trial. And every time you hear Don Jr. and Eric and soon to be Ivanka say, I don't remember that document. I don't know what that concept means in financial controls. I don't know what a tax return is. I don't really understand my father's financial statements. They had an obligation to use a duty of care under New York business corporation law that an ordinary, prudent person in a like position would use. Not an ordinary Trumper, not somebody with the Trump last name, an ordinary, prudent person. Have you heard prudence? Have you heard care? Have you heard expertise about any of these people that have testified so far? You've heard sycophants, bootlickers for their father, who purposely were placed in those positions when they should not have been. They only avoid liability if they exercise the proper duty of care that an ordinary prudent person would in a like position. But all you've heard is the opposite. You've heard that they have done none of that. They've done no oversight, no due diligence, and therefore believe they don't have any responsibility for what's gone wrong. But we see it for what it is. The emperor, Donald Trump, has no clothes, and he has no control officers in key positions. And that's what the Attorney General is focused on. You are not allowed to operate a business in New York with people with their hands on the controls who don't know what they're doing. It's like having a giant jumbo airplane, right? A 747 or whatever, and you put an incompetent behind the controls and then you crash it, right? Not like Sully landing on the Hudson. You put idiots behind the controls and they crash the plane and people are injured and killed as a result. New York cares about how victims of fraud are treated, business fraud especially. You can operate in New York in some other capacity. You want to be a trust fund baby, which is what these three really are. You want to run around on daddy's money and go to all the clubs and go shopping to your heart's content. Go do it. But don't sit in the chair and be a control officer and then try to get the protection of New York law that insulates directors and officers of a company only if they use that duty of care that I just described. Don't do that. In fact, if you want to operate some sort of enterprise in New York that isn't public facing, doesn't have counterparties, and there are some of those out there, they use their own money, they don't have to go to banks, they don't need insurance because they don't have loans, they just interface with third parties and counterparties in a different way, well then you don't have to worry about these issues. But if you're Donald Trump and you want to use OPM, other people's money, then you gotta have appropriate business records, tax returns, statements of financial condition, and control officers who know what they're doing. And if you don't, if you just have a bunch of meat puppets in those chairs that happen to have your last name, this is what will happen to you in front of a New York jury, in a criminal case, or here in a bench trial in front of Judge Engoron. Use your own money. You're so wealthy, Donald Trump, use your own money to go buy property. Don't go to banks. Don't go to insurance companies. Don't take in investors. Stay out of regulated industries, right? Don't try to pump up the volume of your assets in order to get more loans and deflate the volume of your assets in order to save on taxes. Don't do any of those things. No one told Donald Trump to conduct his business or his enterprise corruption racketeering scheme this way, right? But there's an easy way to do this for so long. That's the beauty of what Donald Trump did. You put your own children at risk, and you put them in these control positions when they are obviously not qualified, nor have any interest, nor desire, nor business acumen to occupy those chairs. They don't. There's nothing more. I'm sure if you had a beer with them, you may or may not be interested in what they had to say, but they obviously can't operate at the major league level of New York corporations. And you're seeing this writ large every day in the 5-week trial by the New York Attorney General. And my focus here as a 32-year practicing lawyer is looking at New York corporate law and how these people even got in these positions. Because any other company would not have put ne'er-do-wells in positions of control with this much money running through the company. Or they would have organized the company in a different way, in a way that would have protected them from the New York Attorney General, who has tremendous power since the 1950s to go after corruption and fraud in the operation of New York companies or companies doing business in New York. Don't do business in New York. There are other states. There are redder states, if you will, for Donald Trump to do business in. You don't like New York? Go incorporate in Florida, right? DeSantis' home state or in some other state. But if you're going to do business here, and this is the point, and Donald Trump's vanity and ego has always wanted him to have a New York corporation and the cachet, right? The Tiffany standard, right? For a guy that has Tiffany's as his next door neighbor at Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue. That's what we're watching. So every time you hear Don Jr. or Eric say, I wasn't involved in the financial statements of my father, and then they show him an email from, Jeff McConney, the controller of the company, saying, hey, Eric, here's a copy of your dad's financial statements. Check the boxes. They're also violating each witness here. I assume they were prepared before they took the stand. God help them if they weren't. Witness 101 in any examination, especially one where there's a long period of time for the alleged scheme and many years have gone by, and there's lots of documents, like what I call information asymmetry, where that means the Attorney General knows a lot more than you do, especially in the case of the Trump kids, and has a lot more document knowledge than you do. When they hit you with a question that obviously implicit in the question is they know the answer to it before they've asked it, don't say yes or no definitively. Leave yourself some room. But not the Trump kids. They'll say, well, did you ever participate in the statement of financial conditions by your father? No. Not, I can't recall. Can you show me a document that may refresh my memory? Just no. Which just allows the counterpunch by the examiner to go, let's put on the screen Exhibit 286. An email from Jeff McConney, the controller for the Trump Organization, directly to Eric Trump. I mean, I don't know what I'm watching as a practicing attorney, but I'm just watching a complete S show, right? A complete S show going on in New York with an ill-prepared, unprepared, underprepared group of people who apparently have gotten the gene from their father that they're incapable of being prepared properly for witness testimony. And we see it time and time again. It's low-hanging fruit. It's easy pickings for the New York Attorney General and her team of 10 lawyers in the room to go after these kids who are just proving moment by moment on the stand that they are unqualified to be officers and directors in New York. And what they think is their defense, as I said at the top of the hot take, is actually evidence of the fraud. They double down on it and they lean into it. Like, that's why I hired lawyers. That's why I hired accountants. And sure, there's a provision of the New York Business Corporation law that says it is reasonable as part of your business judgment to rely on other people reasonably who have an expertise that you may not. But can you really do that when one of your guys just went to jail in Allen Weisselberg? when you know that these people are just meat puppets for your father? Is that what an ordinary, prudent person in a like position would do? Rely on these people? And to say you don't have any basic understanding of the fundamentals of the business that you've been tasked with running is another element of fraud. It's fraud by omission. It's fraud by incompetence. Yes, there's a requirement under New York law that to show fraud, you have to show intent, at least for the claims that are now remaining in the case. But they can show intent and willfulness without showing purposefulness, if you will. And we're going to continue to follow this case and the efforts, which seem to be failing in front of this judge, these efforts to try to have the Trump children absolve their father or themselves from any liability. I still haven't heard a defense by any of these children into the inflation of the assets, right? The cooking of the books has still not been adequately defended by any of these children. So implicitly, they are blaming their father for fraud in the statement of financial conditions used time and time again by the Trump organization to get loans, to procure insurance, to get bonds, to finish construction jobs and the like. I still don't hear a defense. They're so busy, the Trump kids, saying that wasn't my job. I was stupid. That's him. Talk to the controller. That's the accountant. I'm not a lawyer. That they don't realize that they are implicitly walking right into the trap laid by the Attorney General, which you'll see in the closing, about how Donald Trump both put children, literally children, in control officer positions and treated them like mushrooms. Some might be thinking, Popok, what are you talking about? Treated them like mushrooms, kept them in the dark, and fed them shit. And that's what we're watching. But that's not okay under New York corporate law. And that's why as we predicted on Legal AF before, the New York Attorney General is going to win this case in front of Judge Engoron. We'll follow it right here on the MeidasTouch Network. Only one place, Legal AF. It is what you think. It's the leading podcast at the intersection of law, politics, and justice. The three leaders of Legal AF have over 32 years of collective experience in courtrooms and courthouses just like this one. I've tried cases in the courthouse and in the courtroom we're talking about right now. And we bring it to you on that podcast, long format. It lasts about an hour. It's great stuff. It's two people, me and Karen Friedman Agnifilo on Wednesdays, me and Ben Meiselas on Saturdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're normally the #1 YouTube live in the world, at least in the top 3, the day we record. And then we're out on audio podcast platforms, wherever you can get it from. If you like this hot take, I do them about every day, sometimes 3 and 4 times a day. Give me a thumbs up. Leave me a comment. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting.
Hey, Meidas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.